Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal of the observation deck's viewport, watching the distant star systems twinkle like scattered diamonds against the endless black. The UES Defiance hung in space like a sleeping giant, its hull scarred from countless battles but still proud, still defiant. Around her, the bridge crew worked in hushed concentration, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of holographic displays. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Reeves called from his station, his voice cutting through the ambient hum of the ship's systems. "We're receiving another transmission from the Galactic Empire. Same message as before." Sarah's jaw tightened. The Empire's ultimatum had been crystal clear 3 months ago when their massive dreadnoughts had appeared in Earth's solar system without warning. Surrender unconditionally or face annihilation. They had given humanity 72 hours to comply. The answer had been delivered not in words, but in the coordinated launch of every human warship, cargo vessel, and civilian transport that could carry weapons. The Empire had expected easy prey. They had studied humanity for decades, watching from the shadows as Earth developed faster-than-light travel, established colonies, and began reaching out to other species. To the Empire, humans appeared to be just another young species, no different from the hundreds they had already conquered and absorbed into their vast dominion. They were wrong. "Put it through, but mute our response channel," Sarah ordered, settling into her command chair. The main viewscreen shimmered and resolved into the image of Admiral Vexter, the Empire's regional commander. His reptilian features were set in what Sarah had learned was the Cathurian equivalent of smug satisfaction. "Primitive humans," Vexter's translated voice filled the bridge, each word dripping with condescension. "Your pathetic resistance has lasted far longer than anticipated, but the inevitable approaches. Our reinforcement fleets arrive within the solar cycle. Surrender now, and your species will be granted the honor of serving the Empire as laborers. Continue this foolish defiance, and we will turn your worlds to ash." Sarah had heard variations of this speech dozens of times over the past months. Each time, the threats grew more elaborate, the promises of mercy more hollow. The Admiral seemed to genuinely believe that fear would eventually break humanity's resolve. He didn't understand that fear had stopped being a factor the moment the first Empire ship had opened fire on the Lunar Research Station. "The same response, Captain?" Reeves asked quietly. "No," Sarah said, standing slowly. "This time I want to tell him something different." She gestured for the communications officer to open the channel. When the indicator light turned green, she stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back in a posture that would have been familiar to naval officers throughout human history. "Admiral Vexter," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the void between their ships. "3 months ago you made a grave miscalculation. You assumed that because we were young, we were weak. Because our technology was different, it was inferior. Because we had not yet encountered your empire, we would bow to its might without question." On the screen, Vexter's golden eyes narrowed. This was not the usual defiant but ultimately futile response he had come to expect from human commanders. Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. "What you fail to understand is that humanity has spent its entire existence at war, not with other species, but with our own world, with nature itself, with the very concept of limitation. We are a species that looked at the impossible and decided it was merely difficult. We gazed at the stars and saw not distant lights, but future homes." She paused, letting her words sink in. Around the bridge, her crew had stopped their work to listen, their faces reflecting a mixture of pride and grim determination. "You attacked us because you thought we would be easy prey. What you discovered instead is that humanity's greatest strength has never been our technology or our numbers. It has been our absolute refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seems inevitable." Admiral Vexter leaned forward in his command chair, his crest of spines rising in what Sarah recognized as agitation. "Empty words from a dying species. Your bravado will not save you when our reinforcements arrive." Sarah smiled, and there was something in that expression that made several of her bridge officers step back involuntarily. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that would change everything. "Admiral," she said softly, "I'm not trying to save my species. We've already done that. What I'm trying to do now is save yours." The transmission cut to static as Admiral Vexter apparently decided he had heard enough. Sarah turned back to her crew, her expression returning to its normal professional calm. "Status report on the evacuation fleets," she asked. Commander Torres looked up from her tactical display. All civilian populations have been successfully relocated to the staging areas beyond the Kuiper Belt. The last transport ships cleared the inner system 6 hours ago. Military families are aboard the deep space carriers as planned. And our defensive positions. All automated defense platforms are online and ready. The asteroid belt fortifications are fully manned. Admiral Hassan confirms that the 3rd Fleet is in position near Jupiter, and Admiral Park reports the 7th Fleet is ready for the Saturn engagement. Sarah nodded. Everything was proceeding according to plan, a plan that had been years in the making, refined and perfected by the greatest military minds humanity had ever produced. The Empire thought they were fighting a desperate last stand. In reality, they were about to discover what happened when humanity had time to prepare. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim called from the communications station, "we're receiving priority signals from the outer marker buoys. Multiple FTL signatures detected. It's the Empire Reinforcement Fleet." Sarah walked to the tactical display and studied the incoming signatures. 57 capital ships, including what appeared to be 2 of the Empire's massive planetary siege platforms. It was an overwhelming force, one that could crack worlds and reduce entire star systems to rubble. Time to engagement. Approximately 14 hours at their current speed. Sarah looked around at her bridge crew, seeing in their faces the same mixture of anticipation and resolve that she felt in her own heart. They were about to make history, one way or another. "All ships, this is Captain Chen aboard the UES Defiance. The Empire's reinforcements have arrived. In 14 hours, we will show them what happens when you attack humanity first. All units are to implement Protocol 7 immediately. Department heads report to the briefing room in 10 minutes. As her senior staff filed out to prepare their various departments, Sarah remained on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the reaches of known space, human colony ships were already racing toward distant galaxies, carrying with them the seeds of a new human civilization. Whether the defense of Earth succeeded or failed, humanity would survive. But the Empire was about to learn that survival and surrender were not the same thing. She touched a control on her command chair, opening a private channel to Admiral Rebecca Park aboard the carrier UES Indomitable. "Rebecca, are you ready for this?" Park's voice came back immediately, steady and confident. "Sarah, we've been ready for this our entire lives. The question is whether the Empire is ready for us." Sarah laughed, a sound with little humor in it. "After tomorrow, I don't think the Empire will ever be ready for anything again." The conversation was interrupted by another priority alert. Lieutenant Kim turned in her station, her face pale but excited. "Captain, you need to see this. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of the Alpha Centauri system. Something big just jumped into FTL, heading this way." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Empire?" "No, sir, the signatures don't match any known Empire drive systems. These are different, more advanced than anything in our databases." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. In all their planning, they had accounted for Empire reinforcements, for siege weapons, for orbital bombardment platforms. They had not planned for unknown alien interventions in what was rapidly becoming the most important battle in human history. "Keep monitoring those signatures. I want to know the instant they drop out of FTL. And Lieutenant." "Yes, Captain." "Start broadcasting our warning signal on all frequencies, including ones the Empire has never used. If there are other species watching this battle, they need to understand what they're about to see." Sarah returned to the observation deck, pressing her palm once again against the cold viewport. In a few hours, this region of space would become a battlefield that would echo through history. Win or lose, humanity was about to announce its presence to the galaxy in a way that would never be forgotten. She just hoped that, when the dust settled, there would still be someone left to remember the lesson. Admiral Vexter stood before the massive tactical hologram in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, studying the human defensive positions with growing irritation. 3 months of siege warfare should have broken any reasonable species. Instead, the humans seemed to be getting stronger, more coordinated, more dangerous with each passing day. "Report on human fleet positions," he commanded, his clawed hands clasped behind his back. Sub-Admiral Creeth approached. her scaled hide showing the stress patterns that indicated prolonged combat exposure. Sir, intelligence estimates indicate approximately 200 human vessels remain in the inner system, concentrated around their gas giant planets and asteroid fortifications. However, our scanning shows significant interference patterns that may be masking additional ships. May be masking. Vexter's voice carried the dangerous quiet that his subordinates had learned to fear. We are the Galactic Empire. Our sensors are the most advanced in known space. How can a primitive species create interference that challenges our technology? Kreeth shifted uncomfortably. Sir, human technology appears to be developing at an unprecedented rate. Our initial assessments suggested they had achieved FTL travel only recently, but their current defensive capabilities indicate decades of advanced military preparation. Their weapon signatures have evolved beyond our original projections. Vexter turned away from the hologram, his golden eyes reflecting the cold fury that had made him one of the Empire's most feared commanders. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had overseen the conquest of 17 star systems and the subjugation of 43 different species. None had presented more than token resistance once the Empire's full might was brought to bear. "Show me the engagement reports from the assault on their outer colonies," he ordered. The hologram shifted, displaying tactical data from the Empire's first strikes against human settlements in the Alpha Centauri system. What had been planned as a simple demonstration of Imperial power had turned into a nightmare that still haunted the surviving commanders. The human colony on Kepler 442b had been defended by a handful of converted cargo ships and mining platforms. Imperial doctrine called for a swift bombardment followed by immediate ground occupation. Instead, the defenders had fought with a ferocity that defied all strategic logic. When their ships were crippled, the crews had used them as guided missiles. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they had improvised explosives from mining equipment. When their positions were overrun, they had triggered underground charges that collapsed entire military installations. The garrison commander reported that human prisoners, when taken, would not respond to standard interrogation techniques, Kreeth continued. Physical pain, psychological pressure, threats to their offspring, none of the traditional methods proved effective. Several prisoners chose death rather than provide tactical information. Vexter had read those reports himself. The garrison commander, a veteran of dozens of successful campaigns, had been reduced to stammering confusion by human behavior. The concept of willing death to protect others was not unknown among spacefaring species, but humans seemed to embrace it with an enthusiasm that bordered on the pathological. What was our casualty ratio in the colony assaults? 7 Imperial soldiers for every human combatant, sir. However, that number may be misleading, as human civilians showed an unprecedented willingness to engage in combat alongside their military forces. This was the detail that troubled Vexter most. In every previous conquest, the Empire had been able to rely on civilian populations to pressure their governments toward surrender. Fear for non-combatants had always been the Empire's greatest weapon. Humans, incomprehensibly, seemed to view their civilians as additional military assets rather than protected populations. "Sir," Communications Officer Velman interrupted, "we're receiving transmission from Imperial Command. The reinforcement fleet has arrived in the outer system." Vexter felt some of his confidence return. 57 additional capital ships, including 2 Worldbreaker-class siege platforms, should be more than sufficient to end human resistance once and for all. "Contact Admiral," aboard the inevitable Victory. "I want immediate coordination for a full-scale assault on the human home system. It's time to end this embarrassment." The main viewscreen shimmered to life, revealing the stern features of Admiral Thexrin, commander of the Imperial Second Fleet. His reputation was built on the complete annihilation of the rebellious Xerian Confederacy, a campaign that had left 3 planets uninhabitable as an example to other potential rebels. Vexter, Thexrin's voice carried across the void. "I've reviewed your tactical reports. 3 months to subdue a single system. The Emperor is disappointed." Vexter kept his expression neutral despite the implied criticism. "Admiral, human resistance has exceeded all initial projections. However, with your reinforcements, we can implement a final solution to this problem. Indeed, I trust you're prepared to coordinate a simultaneous assault on all human positions. The Emperor has authorized the use of planetary bombardment protocols. We will turn their home world to molten glass if necessary. Before Vexter could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Sensor technicians worked frantically at their stations as new contacts appeared on the tactical display. "Sir," Senior Technician Mordek called out, his voice tight with surprise. "Multiple FTL emergence signatures detected throughout the system. Unknown ship types, total count, estimating over 300 vessels." Vexter stared at the display in disbelief. 300 ships represented a fleet larger than anything the humans should have been able to field. Where had they been hiding such a force? Analysis of ship types. "Sir, these don't match any known human designs in our database. The energy signatures are unusual, more advanced than expected." On the view screen, Admiral Thexrin leaned forward, his own tactical staff visible in the background of his bridge. "Vexter, are you certain your intelligence was accurate? These readings suggest a fleet capability beyond what we were briefed to expect." Before anyone could answer, every communication system in the Imperial fleet activated simultaneously. The voice that spoke was human, female, calm, and clear despite the vastness of space it was crossing. "Imperial Fleet Commands, this is Admiral Rebecca Park of the United Earth Space Force. You have entered the Sol system with hostile intent and have spent 3 months conducting aggressive military operations against human worlds and personnel. Under the authority granted to me by the Emergency War Powers Act, I am ordering your immediate withdrawal from this system." Vexter exchanged glances with his command staff. The audacity was breathtaking. A single species, facing the might of the entire Galactic Empire, was issuing orders for withdrawal. "Open a response channel," he commanded. "This is Admiral Vexter of the Imperial Fleet. You are in violation of Imperial conquest protocols. Surrender immediately or face the consequences of your continued resistance." The response came immediately, and there was something in the human admiral's voice that sent an unexpected chill through the command center. "Admiral Vexter, you have made a fundamental error in your calculations. You attacked humanity first, believing us to be weak and unprepared. What you have actually done is provide us with justification for actions that we would never have taken against a peaceful neighbor." The tactical display updated again, showing the massive human fleet deploying in a complex formation that seemed to surround the Imperial forces completely. The ships were indeed unlike anything in Imperial databases. Sleeker, more angular, with energy signatures that suggested power generation capabilities far beyond what should have been possible for such a young species. "You see, Admiral," the human voice continued, "humanity has a saying, don't start a fight but always finish one. You started this fight 3 months ago when you demanded our surrender. Now we're going to finish it." Vexter felt his first genuine moment of uncertainty since the campaign began. "All ships, raise defensive screens and prepare for combat. Activate siege protocols immediately." But even as he gave the orders, part of his mind was processing the impossible nature of what he was seeing. The human fleet wasn't just larger than expected. It was positioned in a way that suggested months of careful planning and coordination. The formations were too precise, the deployment too perfect, for a desperate last stand. "Admiral," Kreith said quietly, approaching his position near the command console, "request permission to contact Imperial Command for additional reinforcements." Vexter studied the tactical display, watching human ships maneuver with a precision that spoke of extensive training and preparation. The terrible possibility began to form in his mind that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities had been deliberately crafted deception. "Open a channel to Imperial Command," he ordered, his voice betraying none of his growing concern. "Priority Alpha, we may have significantly underestimated human military capacity." On the display, the human fleet continued its deployment, each ship moving to its position with the confidence of commanders who knew exactly what they were doing. As the final ships settled into formation, Admiral Park's voice returned to the Imperial frequencies. "Gentlemen, you came here expecting to face a frightened, unprepared species fighting for survival. Instead, you're about to discover what happens when humanity has had 3 months to prepare for your arrival. We would like to thank you for the advance notice." In the silence that followed, Vexter realized that nothing in his 2 centuries of military experience had prepared him for what was about to unfold in the space around Earth's home star. Admiral Rebecca Park stood at the center of the UES Indomitable's command bridge, her eyes fixed on the three-dimensional tactical display that showed every ship in the Sol system. Around her, the bridge hummed with controlled activity as her staff coordinated the movements of the largest human fleet ever assembled. "Admiral," Captain Morrison reported from the tactical station, "all battle groups have reached their assigned positions. The Empire fleet is completely surrounded, though they don't seem to realize it yet." Rebecca allowed herself a small smile. The Imperial commanders were still operating under the assumption that they were fighting a conventional defensive action. They had no idea that every human ship movement over the past 3 months had been carefully choreographed to create this exact situation. "Status on the stealth platforms. All ghost ships are in position and undetected. Admiral Hassan confirms that the Third Fleet's cloaking systems are functioning at optimal efficiency." The ghost ships were perhaps humanity's greatest innovation, born from desperate necessity and years of careful planning. When faced with the Empire's overwhelming technological advantages, human engineers had taken a different approach entirely. Rather than trying to match Imperial firepower directly, they had developed stealth technology that could hide entire fleets from enemy sensors. "Communications put me through to the command network, all battle group commanders." The display shifted to show the faces of humanity's finest naval officers, each commanding a portion of the vast fleet now hidden throughout the solar system. Admiral Hassan, the tactical genius who had developed the encirclement strategy. Admiral Chen, whose ship had been holding the line against impossible odds for 3 months. Admiral Kumar, commanding the reserve forces positioned beyond Neptune's orbit. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rebecca began, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the fleet, "the Empire believes they're about to win a glorious victory against a defeated enemy. What they're actually about to experience is a demonstration of what happens when humanity goes to war." She paused, looking at each face on the display. These men and women had spent their entire careers preparing for a conflict most had hoped would never come. Now that it was here, they were ready to show the galaxy what human military doctrine could accomplish when given proper time and resources. "The Empire attacked our colonies first. They killed civilians. They demanded our surrender without provocation. In doing so, they removed any moral constraints on our response." Rebecca's voice hardened. "As of this moment, we are no longer fighting a defensive action. We are demonstrating to the galaxy that attacking humanity first is the last mistake any species will ever make." Admiral Hassan leaned forward in his display window. "Admiral, our intelligence suggests the Empire has committed approximately 60% of their regional fleet strength to this system. If we can achieve decisive victory here, we send a message that will reach every corner of the galaxy," Rebecca finished. "Exactly as planned, all commands implement Operation Thunderclap, show them what human warfare looks like." The tactical display erupted into motion as hundreds of human ships dropped their stealth systems simultaneously. The Imperial fleet, which had believed itself to be engaging a smaller force in the inner system, suddenly found themselves surrounded by a sphere of enemy vessels extending from Mercury's orbit to the outer Kuiper belt. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving frantic signals from the Imperial fleet. They're attempting to contact their command structure." "Let them," Rebecca replied. "I want the entire Empire to hear what happens next." On the main view screen, Admiral Vexter's image appeared, his reptilian features showing the stress patterns that indicated complete shock. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations as they tried to process the impossible tactical situation they now faced. "Human Admiral," Vexter's voice was no longer carrying its previous confidence, "you have revealed ships that were not detected by our sensors. This is unexpected." Rebecca stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back in the posture that had become her signature throughout the fleet. "Admiral Vexter, you're about to learn something that no species in this galaxy has ever had to face before. You're about to experience human military doctrine when we have had adequate time to prepare." The Imperial Admiral's crest of spines rose in what Rebecca recognized as defensive aggression. "Regardless of your numbers, human, Imperial technology remains superior. Our ships are larger, better armed, more heavily armored than anything in your fleet." You're absolutely right, Rebecca agreed, surprising both Vexter and several members of her own staff. Your ships are superior to ours in every conventional measure. Your technology is more advanced. Your weapons are more powerful. Your defenses are stronger. She paused, letting the admission sink in across the communication channel. The problem, Admiral, is that you're not fighting our ships. You're fighting our minds. At Rebecca's signal, the human fleet began to move. But instead of the straightforward assault patterns that characterized most space combat, the human ships moved in complex, interwoven formations that seemed to defy tactical logic. Groups of smaller vessels wove between larger ships in patterns that created overlapping fields of fire, while preventing the Imperial fleet from targeting any single formation effectively. All ships, Rebecca commanded on the fleet frequency, implement pattern Delta 7. Show them what cooperative tactics look like. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded galactic history. The human fleet moved as a single organism, each ship's actions perfectly coordinated with hundreds of others. When Imperial vessels targeted specific formations, they found their intended prey had vanished, replaced by different ships that had moved into position to exploit the Imperial firing solutions. "Weapons free," Rebecca ordered. "Let them see what human engineering can do when we stop trying to fight fair." The first human weapons impacts on Imperial ships produced results that sent shock waves through both fleets. Instead of the energy beam exchanges that characterized most galactic warfare, human weapons seemed designed around principles that the Empire had never encountered. Kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds tore through Imperial shields as if they didn't exist. Guided missiles that seemed to think for themselves evaded defensive fire and struck with precision that defied Imperial understanding of targeting systems. "Admiral," Captain Morrison called out, his voice tight with excitement, "the Third Fleet reports successful implementation of the hammer pattern. They've broken through Imperial defensive lines in Sector 7. Rebecca nodded. The hammer pattern was another human innovation, born from studying Empire tactics and developing specific countermeasures. Where Imperial doctrine relied on massive ships fighting individual duels, human tactics emphasized coordinated group attacks that overwhelmed defensive systems through sheer complexity. On the display, Imperial ship after Imperial ship found itself facing not one or two opponents, but coordinated strikes from a dozen different vectors simultaneously. Their superior firepower became useless when they couldn't target their attackers effectively. Their stronger defenses failed under the accumulated damage from multiple coordinated strikes. "Admiral Park," Vexter's voice cut through the tactical chatter, and Rebecca could hear the strain in his words. "Your tactics violate accepted principles of honorable warfare. This level of coordination, it's not natural." Rebecca's laugh was cold and without humor. "Admiral, you came to our system to commit genocide. You attacked our colonies without warning. You demanded the surrender of our entire species. And now you want to lecture us about honor." She gestured to the tactical display, where Imperial formations were being systematically dismantled by human fleet movements. "This is what humanity brings to war, Admiral. We don't fight for honor. We don't fight for glory. We fight to win, and we use every advantage we can create, discover, or imagine." The battle continued to unfold according to human planning. Imperial ships, designed for the traditional style of galactic warfare, found themselves completely unable to cope with human tactical innovations. Their commanders, trained in conventional strategies, couldn't adapt quickly enough to the rapid, coordinated movements of human formations. "Admiral," the sensor officer reported, "detecting massive energy buildup from the Imperial siege platforms. They're preparing to use planetary bombardment weapons." Rebecca had been expecting this. When faced with tactical defeat, Imperial doctrine called for the destruction of enemy population centers as a final gesture of spite. It was exactly the kind of response that humanity had planned for. "All ships implement Protocol Omega. It's time to show the galaxy what human protective instincts look like." What happened next would be recorded in galactic history as the moment when humanity announced its true nature to the universe. Every human ship in the system, from massive battleships to tiny escort vessels, moved simultaneously to place themselves between the Imperial siege weapons and Earth. The formation they created wasn't just a defensive screen, it was a statement of absolute commitment. "Admiral Vexter," Rebecca's voice carried across space with the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. You want to use weapons of mass destruction against our home world. We understand your intentions, and we're prepared to demonstrate our response. On the tactical display, human formations began moving toward the Imperial siege platforms with a speed and determination that made it clear no force in the universe would stop them from protecting their home. You attacked humanity first, Admiral. Now you get to learn what that really means. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion had fallen into chaos as Admiral Vexter watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by tactical maneuvers he had never encountered in 2 centuries of military service. The humans moved their ships like a single coordinated entity, each vessel's actions perfectly timed with hundreds of others to create attack patterns that defied Imperial understanding. Sir, Sub-Admiral Creeth approached his position at the command console, her scaled hide showing the deep stress patterns that indicated near panic. We've lost 47 ships in the past 30 minutes. The humans are using some form of coordinated attack doctrine that our defensive protocols can't counter. Vexter studied the tactical display, watching as another Imperial battle group was enveloped by swirling formations of human ships. The enemy vessels moved like predatory fish, striking from multiple angles before disappearing into formations that made targeting them nearly impossible. What are our casualties compared to theirs? Sir, preliminary estimates suggest Imperial losses are running 12-1 against human casualties. Their coordination is preventing us from concentrating fire effectively. 12-1. The number hit Vexter like a physical blow. In every previous Imperial campaign, technological superiority had ensured favorable casualty ratios. The Empire's superior firepower and defensive systems had always proved decisive against younger species. Against humans, those same advantages seemed to be working against them. Communications, get me Admiral Thexron immediately. The view screen shimmered to reveal the command bridge of the inevitable victory, where Admiral Thexron stood surrounded by his tactical staff. Behind him, damage control teams were working frantically to repair systems that had been overwhelmed by the intensity of human attacks. Vexter, Thexron's voice carried a strain that Vexter had never heard from the veteran commander. My siege platforms are under direct assault. Human formations are moving toward them with apparent disregard for casualties. They're accepting losses that would break any rational species. Vexter understood the implications immediately. The siege platforms were the Empire's ultimate weapon, designed to crack planetary surfaces and reduce entire worlds to molten slag. If humans were willing to sacrifice significant portions of their fleet to protect their home world, it suggested a level of commitment that went beyond military doctrine. Admiral, implement immediate bombardment protocols. If we can't defeat their fleet conventionally, we eliminate their population centers and force surrender through civilian casualties. Already attempted, Thexron replied grimly. The human formations have created defensive screens around their planet that are absorbing our bombardment fire. They're literally using their ships as shields for their world. Vexter stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he was seeing. The human fleet had reorganized itself into overlapping defensive formations that created multiple layers of protection around Earth. Ships that should have been engaging Imperial forces were instead positioning themselves to intercept planetary bombardment fire, even though doing so meant certain destruction. Sir, Senior Technician Mordek called from his sensor station, detecting new contacts dropping out of FTL at extreme sensor range. Multiple ships, unknown configuration. More human reinforcements. Negative, sir. The drive signatures are completely different. These appear to be observer vessels, multiple species maintaining position at the edge of the system. Vexter felt a cold realization wash over him. Word of the battle was spreading throughout local space. Other species were coming to watch what was happening in the Sol system. The implications were staggering. If the Empire suffered a significant defeat here, with witnesses from other civilizations, it could encourage rebellion throughout Imperial space. All remaining ships implement final assault protocols. We end this now, regardless of cost. But even as Vexter gave the order, he could see that the tactical situation had moved beyond Imperial control. Human formations continued their deadly dance around Imperial vessels, striking with precision and coordination that seemed almost supernatural. Worse, The humans were adapting their tactics in real time, responding to Imperial countermeasures faster than should have been possible. Admiral, Communications Officer Velman interrupted. We're receiving a transmission on Imperial emergency frequencies. It's from the human Admiral. Put it through. Admiral Park's face appeared on the main view screen, and Vexter was struck by the calm confidence in her expression. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship showed none of the chaos and stress that characterized Imperial command centers. Her crew worked with quiet efficiency, as if the destruction of the most powerful fleet in this region of space was merely another routine operation. Admiral Vexter, Park began, her voice carrying clearly across the void. I'm contacting you to offer terms for the survival of your remaining forces. Vexter's crest of spines rose in automatic aggression. Humans do not dictate terms to the Galactic Empire. We will fight to the last ship rather than accept defeat from a primitive species. Park's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested she had expected exactly that response. Admiral, in the past hour, you've lost 63 ships to our 28. Your remaining forces are surrounded and cut off from reinforcement. Your siege platforms are being systematically disabled. You have no viable tactical options remaining. The brutal mathematics of the situation were undeniable, but Vexter had spent his entire career in service to an empire that had never accepted defeat. Surrender was not merely unthinkable. It was literally outside the parameters of Imperial military doctrine. We will not surrender to an inferior species. I'm not asking you to surrender, Park replied, and there was something in her tone that made Vexter pause. I'm offering you the opportunity to witness something that no other species in this galaxy has ever seen. The view screen split to show tactical displays from multiple points throughout the battle zone. Vexter found himself looking at the engagement from human perspectives, seeing Imperial formations as the humans saw them, isolated, predictable, vulnerable. For the past 3 months, you've been fighting what you thought was a desperate defensive action. What you've actually been participating in is the largest military exercise in human history. Vexter felt his blood turn cold as the implications of Park's words became clear. Every engagement, every tactical exchange, every weapon test has been carefully observed and analyzed by human military planners. You've provided us with complete intelligence on Imperial military capabilities, tactical doctrines, and strategic limitations. The tactical displays continued showing Imperial ships being systematically destroyed by human formations that moved with perfect coordination. But now Vexter was seeing the pattern. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating complete mastery of Imperial weaknesses. You came here to conquer a single species. What you've actually done is provide humanity with everything we need to know to defeat the entire Galactic Empire. The communication channel filled with silence as the magnitude of the strategic disaster became apparent. The Empire had committed its most powerful regional fleet to what it thought was a simple conquest operation. Instead, it had walked directly into a trap that had been years in the making. But Admiral, Park continued, and now Vexter could hear the steel beneath her calm exterior. That's not the message I want you to take back to your empire. What message? The message is simple. Humanity didn't seek this conflict. We didn't attack Imperial worlds or threaten Imperial interests. We were willing to coexist peacefully with the Empire and every other species in the galaxy. Park leaned forward, and Vexter could see in her expression the implacable determination that had driven humanity to this moment. But you attacked us first. You came to our system with weapons of conquest and demands for surrender. You killed our people and threatened our worlds. In doing so, you taught us something valuable about the nature of galactic politics. The tactical displays showed the final Imperial ships being overwhelmed by human formations. In the space of 2 hours, the most powerful fleet in Imperial regional space had been reduced to scattered survivors. You taught us that in this galaxy, peaceful species are seen as prey. That technological advancement without military power is considered weakness. That the only way to ensure human survival is to make certain that attacking humanity is the last mistake any species ever makes. Vexter watched his flagship's tactical display show the approach of multiple human battle groups. His ship was surrounded, outnumbered, and completely outmaneuvered. Yet Admiral Park was still talking rather than simply finishing the destruction. I'm going to let you live, Admiral Vexter. You and the crews of your remaining ships. You're going to return to Imperial space and deliver a message to your Emperor." "What message?" Vexter asked, though part of him already knew he didn't want to hear the answer. "The message is this: humanity is no longer a target for conquest. We are now a force that will respond to aggression with overwhelming retaliation. Any species that attacks human worlds or human people will face the full weight of human military power." Park's image grew larger on the view screen as she moved closer to her own communication pickup. "And Admiral, make sure your Emperor understands that this demonstration represents less than 30% of current human military capacity. What you've seen today is what happens when humanity is caught by surprise and forced to respond defensively." The implications were staggering. If what the humans had displayed was only a fraction of their actual capabilities, then the strategic balance of the entire region had just shifted dramatically. "Tell your Emperor that the age of imperial expansion is over. Humanity will ensure that peaceful species are no longer prey for aggressive empires. This is our promise to the galaxy." As the communication ended, Vexter stood in the ruins of what had been the most powerful naval force in Imperial regional space, trying to comprehend how completely the strategic situation had changed. The Empire had attacked humanity first, expecting easy conquest. Instead, they had created the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Emperor Zarthek stood on the observation deck of his palace ship, staring out at the stars that had once represented unlimited conquest. The massive vessel hung in space above the Imperial capital world, its hull scarred by recent battles that should never have been necessary. Around him, the sounds of construction echoed through the corridors as automated systems worked to repair damage that had once been unthinkable. The report from Admiral Vexter lay open on the crystalline display table beside him, its contents more disturbing than any intelligence the Empire had ever received. According to the surviving commander, humanity possessed military capabilities that exceeded Imperial projections by orders of magnitude. Worse, they had demonstrated tactical coordination and strategic planning that suggested decades of preparation for a conflict the Empire had initiated. "Your Majesty," Fleet Admiral Morketh approached across the polished deck, his ceremonial armor bearing the stress marks that indicated recent combat exposure. "The regional governors are reporting increasing unrest in the outer systems. News of the Sol defeat has reached 17 sectors, and local species are beginning to question Imperial authority." Zarthek turned from the viewport, his ancient features showing the weight of an empire that had never known serious challenge. For 1,000 years, the Galactic Empire had expanded steadily through known space, incorporating younger species through a combination of technological superiority and overwhelming military force. The concept of defeat by a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel within living memory had been literally impossible to contemplate. "What is the current status of human military activities?" "Your Majesty, human fleets have been detected in 43 systems previously considered secure Imperial space. They're not conducting attacks, but their presence is significant. Local commanders report that human ships appear wherever Imperial forces attempt to suppress local unrest." Zarthek studied the tactical display that showed the current disposition of Imperial forces throughout their territory. Red markers indicated systems where human ships had been detected, and the pattern was clear. Humanity was systematically positioning itself to interfere with Imperial operations across vast regions of space. "Are they engaging our forces directly?" "No, Your Majesty. Human commanders have been very careful to avoid initiating combat. However, their presence prevents us from using standard suppression techniques against rebellious populations. Local species are emboldened by human protection, and our ground forces report increasing resistance in areas where human ships are visible." This was exactly the strategic nightmare that Zarthek had feared when he first read Vexter's report. Humanity wasn't simply defending itself, it was actively undermining Imperial authority throughout known space. Their promise to protect peaceful species from aggressive empires was being implemented on a galactic scale. "Show me the latest intelligence on human military capacity." The tactical display shifted to show what Imperial reconnaissance had been able to determine about human fleet strength. The numbers were staggering and growing worse with each intelligence update. Conservative estimates suggested that humanity had deployed over 3,000 ships of the line in the 6 months since Saul, with production rates that indicated they could maintain that pace indefinitely. Admiral, how is it possible for a species to achieve such rapid military expansion? Our own shipyards require years to construct vessels of comparable capability. Morketh approached the display highlighting specific sections of the intelligence data. Your Majesty, human shipbuilding appears to be based on principles we don't fully understand. They're using automated construction techniques that can produce multiple vessels simultaneously. More concerning, their ships seem to be designed specifically to counter Imperial tactical doctrines. Zarthek had studied those tactical analyses himself. Human ships were smaller and less heavily armed than Imperial vessels, but they operated in coordinated formations that made their individual weaknesses irrelevant. When Imperial commanders tried to engage human fleets using traditional tactics, they found themselves facing opponents who seemed to anticipate every move. What about the other species? Are any of them allying with humanity against us? That's where the situation becomes more complex, Your Majesty. Humanity isn't seeking traditional alliances. Instead, they're offering protection to any species that declares neutrality and renounces aggressive expansion. Over 200 civilizations have accepted human protection in the past months. The implications were staggering. The Empire's traditional strategy of conquest relied on isolating target species and preventing them from forming defensive alliances. Humanity had turned that strategy completely around, creating a vast network of protected species that were effectively immune to Imperial aggression. Your Majesty, Communications Minister Velthanes interrupted, approaching from the command alcove. We're receiving a priority transmission from the human capital ship. They're requesting direct communication with you. Zarthek felt his primary heart skip a beat. Direct communication between the human leadership and the Imperial throne would carry implications that would echo throughout galactic politics. Yet refusing to respond would suggest weakness that could encourage further rebellion. Put it through to the main display. The view screen shimmered and resolved into the image of a human female wearing what appeared to be a simple military uniform. Behind her, the bridge of her ship was visible, showing the same quiet efficiency that had characterized human operations throughout their recent campaigns. Emperor Zarthek, the human began, her voice carrying clearly across the vast distance between their ships. I am Admiral Rebecca Park of the United Earth Space Force. I'm contacting you to discuss the current situation between our civilizations. Zarthek drew himself to his full height, his ceremonial robes flowing around him in the carefully controlled atmosphere of the observation deck. Human Admiral, you speak directly to the sovereign ruler of the Galactic Empire. Your species has interfered with Imperial operations throughout our territory. This constitutes an act of war. Park's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes suggested she had expected exactly that response. Your Majesty, with respect, the Galactic Empire declared war on humanity when it invaded our system 6 months ago. What we're doing now is simply responding to that declaration. The statement was factually accurate, but Zarthek had never expected to hear Imperial actions described in such terms. The Empire conquered, it didn't declare war against equals. The Empire claims dominion over this region of space by right of superior force and technological advancement. Your species will submit to Imperial authority or face the consequences of continued resistance. Your Majesty, Park replied, and now Zarthek could hear steel beneath the diplomatic politeness. The Empire's right of dominion ended when you attacked humanity first. What you initiated was a conflict between equals, and that conflict has been decisively resolved. Park gestured, and the display behind her showed a tactical representation of local space. Hundreds of ship markers indicated human fleet positions throughout what had been secure Imperial territory. As we speak, human forces are positioned to protect over 200 species that have requested our assistance. Our shipyards are producing vessels at a rate that exceeds Imperial construction capacity by a factor of 12. Our technological development programs are advancing faster than your intelligence services can monitor. The numbers were accurate. Zarthek's own advisors had confirmed them through independent analysis. Humanity had achieved military-industrial capacity that exceeded the Empire's despite having a fraction of Imperial territory and resources. "What do you want from the Empire?" Zarthek asked, though he suspected the answer would be far more extensive than he was prepared to accept. "We want you to stop," Park said simply. "Stop expanding. Stop conquering peaceful species. Stop using superior force to impose imperial will on civilizations that pose no threat to you. The Empire has conquered successfully for 1,000 years. We will not cease expansion because a single species objects to our methods." Park leaned forward, and Zarthek could see in her expression the same implacable determination that had driven humanity to victory at Sol. "Your Majesty, you're not understanding the new strategic reality. The Empire's expansion is already over. Any attempt to conquer protected species will result in direct confrontation with human forces. Any attack on human ships or human interests will trigger a military response that will make the Sol engagement look like a minor skirmish." The threat was delivered in calm, professional tones, but its implications were unmistakable. Humanity was positioning itself as the military guarantor of galactic peace, with the power to enforce that peace against imperial objections. And if the Empire chooses to test human resolve— Park's smile was cold and completely without humor. "Your Majesty, the Empire attacked humanity first. In doing so, you provided us with legal and moral justification for any response we choose to make. We've spent 6 months demonstrating what human defensive capabilities look like." The viewscreen split to show tactical footage from recent engagements between human and Imperial forces. In every case, Imperial ships were systematically outmaneuvered and destroyed by human formations that moved within human precision and coordination. "If you force us to demonstrate what human offensive capabilities look like, the results will be far more dramatic." Park's image filled the screen again as she delivered her final statement. "The choice is yours, Your Majesty. The Empire can accept the new reality and learn to coexist peacefully with other species, or it can continue aggressive expansion and face the full weight of human military power." The communication ended, leaving Zarthek alone with his advisors and the enormity of the strategic transformation that had taken place. In 6 months, humanity had gone from unknown species to galactic superpower, all because the Empire had made the fundamental error of attacking them first. "Your Majesty," Admiral Morketh said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zarthek looked out at the stars that no longer represented unlimited conquest, but rather the boundaries of an empire that had learned the price of underestimating human resolve. "Send word to all regional commanders. Imperial expansion is suspended pending strategic reassessment. Any contact with human forces is to be avoided unless absolutely necessary." As his staff moved to implement the orders, Zarthek remained at the viewport, contemplating how completely the galaxy had changed. The Empire had ruled through superior force for 1,000 years, secure in the knowledge that no species could challenge imperial might. Humanity had proven that assumption catastrophically wrong, and now every species in known space understood that the age of imperial dominance was over. The humans had kept their promise. Attacking them first had indeed been the Empire's last mistake. In the distance, human ships moved through space with the confidence of a species that had looked at the impossible and decided it was merely difficult. They had gazed at the stars and seen not distant lights, but future homes that would be protected by whatever force was necessary. The Empire had wanted easy conquest. Instead, they had created the guardians of galactic peace, and the universe would never be the same.